This is Sprout, a little planet in the Galeries system. It is also home to the Nekomimi Oni. This is Chibeann. She was born on a sunny afternoon on her home planet of Sprout in the Galeries solar system. She was given the name Chibeann due to the fact that at birth, she was the size of a small bean. Chibeann had no siblings, so she lived her life without having to share anything with others. This made her prone to being pretty stingy when it comes to her personal belongings. Chibeann lived in a small apartment building with her father and lived a pretty normal and average life, until one fateful day. While she was sketching on her notebook in her room, she was about to get up from her desk to grab some more of her famous chocolate chip cookies, but accidentally tripped over her desk lamp wire, like the klutz she is. This made her desk lamp fall onto her sketchbook paper. The heat from the lamp started a small fire. Chibeann was startled by the sudden crackling of flames coming from behind her as she leapt up off the ground, and quickly grabbed her cookie jar protectively. She then ran around in circles screaming in panic, not knowing what to do. Her father was out of the house at the moment doing some errands, so it was up to Bean to figure out how to stop this flaming mess. It wasn't long after till Bean's father came back home to see the devastation his child had created. The house was in ashes. Surprisingly, during the chaos, Bean had managed to escape through her bedroom window and was found curled up in a ball with her cookie jar crying. Bean's father was very disappointed in her, so much in fact that he immediately sent her away to live on her own, hoping she would learn to take more responsibility for herself. This incident has traumatized Bean forever. She was left to fend for herself and ended up in the outskirts of the town she grew up in, wandering around for days, until she saw a shiny glowing void start forming in front of her. Bean, being exhausted and desperate, plunged right through it head first into the purple abyss, falling for hours until she plopped right into a trash can. She found herself on a strange new planet called Earth, and from that moment forward her life was on a new path. It was a rough start for Bean. She found herself in a strange new world different from her own. She spent her first few days sitting in that trash can, too afraid to see what lurked outside. It wasn't until a flying rat thing, which Bean later found out was called a bird, came and started pecking at her head, thinking she was some kind of cotton candy treat. She finally leapt out of the trash, and ran through the alley trying to bat the stubborn creature away, but soon found herself being assaulted by a barrage of pointed beaks as the winged creature called in its backup. This little flurry of birds pushed Bean to end up walking off the edge of a nearby PA. Bean wasn't a very good swimmer and ended up plunging into the watery depths. At the very least, she wasn't getting attacked by those rabid squawking birds. As Bean sunk down to the very bottom, she lost all consciousness. Her last glimpse was of the sunlight gleaming down at her, and then that light started to fade as a shadowy figure came into sight just as she let go. Her thoughts became silent as she passed out, her hope for any savior being snuffed out. Just as quickly as Bean passed out, she was soon awoken by the sudden rush of oxygen filling her lungs, the water suffocating her throat being evaporated as if like magic. Bean coughed and coughed as she sat straight up, her eyes flashing open as her vision slowly adjusted to the brightly lit sunset-themed room. Bean was surprised to find herself surrounded by such a comforting home. Her attention was then pulled to the sound of glass breaking as she spotted a blue-haired girl who seemed to be just a couple years older than her, holding a tray which had been holding some tea and cookies. The cookies ended up on the floor, which made Bean a little sad. "OMYGAH, the girl said, her fluffy dog ears perking up and her tail wagging in relief. Bean was looking down at the wasted food and shed a tear before then looking back at the girl and giving an awkward "Who are you? Where am I? And why did you just waste those perfectly good cookies and tea?" Bean said in response to the girl's sudden shout. Bean was soon filled in on the details of what had happened by the blue-haired Shiba girl, who she found out was called Mushy. "Oh, you saved me for real, for real? Thanks, shorty babe. So, can I still have those floor cookies perchance?" Bean had replied after the whole story. Mushy had a very concerned expression on her face, but nodded slowly. After a couple minutes of Bean indulging in some floor cookies, she started to explain to Mushy her current situation. Mushy listened and was very intrigued and sympathetic to Bean's story. "Zam," was the only response Mushy could let out. Bean smiled nervously and nodded. "Yeah, so I literally have no idea what I'm meant to do," Bean said in an exhausted tone as she looked down at her hands, clenching them into fists on her lap, as she tried to hold in the pent-up emotions she had been building up since she first got kicked out of her old home. Mushy noticed this and simply placed a hand on Bean's shoulder and gave a reassuring smile. "Hey buddy, you can crash here if you need, homies help homies," Mushy said as she gave Bean a small hug. Bean's ears twitched and her tail flicked in surprise at this offer. She accepted the hug and her stress subsided. "For real life? Thank you shorty babe, it really means a lot you'd let me stay here. I'll try my best to be the greatest roomie of all time, Bean vowed as she was now out of her slump. This is the beginning of beautiful friendship, Bean thought, and it was. For the next 14 years Bean and Mushy built up a tight bond that would never be broken even if Bean was a little hoarse. A little after Bean had been living with Mushy, she had the sudden desire to get a cat for their place. Mushy was all for the idea. The problem however lay in Bean's unfortunate allergies, which happened to be triggered by cat fur. Ironic, isn't it? This meant that Bean couldn't be near the fluffy cat if she got one, sadly. Despite this fact, Bean was still stubborn and tried many places to find a suitable cat to call her own. As you would think, her journey didn't turn up anything, until Mushy came into Bean's room with a flyer for some animal protest she found on the floor while she was on her way back from a boba run. Bean was confused at first, but then saw that the flyer said that scientists were doing weird experiments on many different animals, cats being one of them. Since both Mushy and Bean had strong desires to protect cute little animals, they decided to go and help liberate the lab animal. So later that night Bean and Mushy tackled the task. Bean managed to come up with some kind of plan that may or may not actually work. By some miracle Bean and Mushy managed to get inside by using their shape-shifting abilities. Once inside, Bean was able to free all the animals and get them safely out. But just as she was about to leave, she heard a voice in her head pleading for help. Bean, being a little too naive, went to follow the voice, and found herself face to face with a weird-looking glass container that held a pink fog within its walls. Bean was surprised as a pink paw pressed against the inside of the glass. Bean decided, against Mushy's better judgment, to open up the container, and with that a small kitten perked its head out. Both Bean and Mushy were overwhelmed with the amount of cuteness the creature possessed. So with that and the fact Bean didn't immediately start sneezing and wheezing, the two simply took the little guy. Bean and Mushy seemed to be having a wonderful life now with the newest addition to their household. There was just one thing missing now. How were the two going to keep up with the pet care bills? Well, that's simple. Bean just booted up her PC and set out to be a worldwide famous Twitch streamer. Also dragging Mushy along on her wild fantasy life, the two began their careers. So that's where our tale will end for now, at least, until the next DLC. Wait, why are you still here? Huh? Oh, you're wondering how Bean met that one Kazu dude she loves to talk about so much? Well, too bad. That's a secret. For now, he